Hey, friend, welcome to another episode of the Sunday Sitdown. And if you are watching, our seats have been reversed. If you're listening, our seats have been reversed. And
it makes no difference.
It makes no difference because we sound the same. But this is a great opportunity that I have to sit down with Justin, who preached this past Sunday on a long passage. I gave him a long passage.
What are you doing to me?
I know. We've been going so close to verse by verse, just 4-6 verses at a time, and now 24 verses on Communion Sunday, World Communion Sunday, no less.
Oh,
and
I missed out on that. Sorry.
No, yes, that's fine. I think I appreciate that. What I intend for our community is there will be years where we talk about that kind of stuff, and there will be years where we don't, because what's most important is still our own community. We've always been this way. Why aren't we doing the preaching politics and this is what's going on in the world and we're going to talk about this and we're going to preach on that? We don't do that because
we're going through Luke.
You get exactly. For a long time, you get enough of that in your life. You're bombarded by stuff all the time. And one of the rhythms that you talked about this week is this rhythm of being gathered together, sitting in God's presence, wrestling out what it means to be known by Jesus and to know Jesus, and then to wrestle out our sentness back into the world. So should preaching be completely disconnected from what's going on in the world? No, absolutely not.
No.
But there are also seasons and moments where that's not what it's about. It's about Jesus. We root ourselves in Scripture, and there's a little bit of a respite and retreat, and we need to sit in with a community, the presence of God, and then feel like we can go back into the world. So no, that's some of the rhythm of what we do, which is just great because that informed so much of the large arc of your sermon. But 24 verses, Luke 10, 1-24. We're not going to read all of it.
No. If
you want to pause, maybe we'll drop a link to Bible Gateway or the YouVersion app in the description. You can go and read it yourself.
Yeah.
It's a great passage. Jesus sending out the disciples.
And initially didn't think that, I was this could be 3 sermons, but actually I think it was the right call to make this one cohesive package. It's a particular thing that Jesus and his disciples do, and then they unpack it, and then they move on. And next week is going to be, you'll be preaching from the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan, and so it's a very clear delineation of hey, this was Jesus sending out the 72, and then they talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing that I actually was noticing as you were preaching. So as you're preaching, and this is occupational hazard and a little bit again of insider baseball.
Yeah.
But as you're preaching, I'm all in. I'm I've got a full page of notes from your sermon, and to the right, that's on the left side of my notebook. On the right side of my notebook, I was just firing out thoughts, a whole lot of connections to where we're headed this coming Sunday.
So you're ready to go.
Yeah. Well,
happy to help.
Almost. Yeah. So it was how, it's that dual, you're always, you're in, and because of how you're preaching and what you're really leaning into, I'm oh, that's the tie-in for next week. And here's how we go into the Good Samaritan. All these things are happening. It's actually, I noticed this as you were preaching, as I was reading, I think it might actually be still the same instance.
That he's expanding on what's happening here with his dialogue with the disciples?
I think so, because it's from the crowd that there rises this expert in the law to challenge Jesus.
Whew.
And so it's almost it's happening very much at the same time in the way Luke presents it. So anyway,
cool.
But we're gonna save that for next week.
Yeah.
Where we had thought about starting today is 24 verses. You're gonna leave a lot on the cutting floor in order to preach that in less than 24 hours. So there's a lot going on in this passage around connection to the Old Testament and the imagery that Jesus is using in his language.
Yeah.
Before off camera, we were talking, you're I just want some time to nerd out on some of these details.
I need it.
Yeah.
I need it. Like there's so much. And I was talking with someone after the service yesterday who mentioned, and this person is very knowledgeable on like Old Testament, like he's a geography nerd when it comes to Bible geography, and so he was talking about some interesting facts about the places Jesus mentioned, like Bethsaida, Capernaum, Chorazin, and so I kind of like fed him a little bit more. I was like, hey, well, let me tell you these other like crazy facts that are happening that didn't preach well, but we're kind of undergirding some of this.
Yeah. So let's fill in that for people.
Yeah.
And we would say this, like, if this is just so boring that you can't stand it, don't turn it off.
Yeah.
Skip ahead. I can't give you the timestamp because we're recording this right now.
Yeah. But probably like 4 or 5 minutes. I'll try to
So
be shorter.
double that.
Yeah.
we're gonna go into I think 4 really practical questions after this.
Yeah.
So the whole podcast episode won't be this like deep dive into the background. We're gonna do a little bit of deep dive, and we're gonna get into 4 really practical questions.
Yeah.
So you can skip ahead to those 4 practical questions. If we think about it, we'll leave that in the show notes so you can check it out.
Or
too.
go on like 1.5 speed and just be like, okay, maybe this is interesting, maybe it's not. And this is one of those things where like, yeah, we don't want this to be the focal point, right? Like this is not the most important thing, but sometimes it's helpful to remember what Luke is doing here. And what Jesus in some of his language and actions is drawing the people back to, right? In this case, it's Moses. And we've seen that a number of times with throughout Luke already, where there are these callbacks and allusions with an A back to the Old Testament, to particularly Moses and, Jesus in the wilderness, Jesus coming down the mountain, like all these different, it's very, they're making it pretty clear Jesus is a new Moses. And so the backdrop here, as some scholars were sharing in the commentaries, is that this passage seems to be happening somewhere around what is called the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths. I think in Hebrew it's Sukkot. I probably butchered that. I'm so sorry to our Jewish friends. I tried. And Sukkot happens several days after Yom Kippur, which was last week. My daughter was telling me she was learning about that in school because they tend to learn about all the different festivals in their school, which is pretty cool actually. So here's what's crazy. So I'm preaching this passage that the backdrop of it is the Feast of Tabernacles, which we'll get into. That starts tonight in real time. So we're recording this on October 6th, 2025, and the Feast of Tabernacles falls on the evening of October 6th, 2025 for the next week. It's a festival that traditionally people would pilgrimage to Jerusalem, to the temple, and this is an important holiday that calls back to Moses and the Israelites in the wilderness and God's provision of manna and the quail and just food, and eventually became more about just God's provision of the harvest, right?
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, when Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, they're thinking, oh yeah, Feast of Tabernacles. That's exactly what's happening. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so pray to the Lord of the harvest, right? And so like it brings this greater depth to what Jesus is saying when you know this. And again, in the way that I had kind of been structuring my sermon, it did not fit, but it was underlying there. And I was like, I just got to talk about it because it's just cool. And then even later on in the passage, when Jesus talks about, this little kind of obscure language where he talks about Satan falling from heaven and like a lightning, like a rod of lightning. And then, that they will trample on snakes and scorpions. And I mentioned a little bit of this in the sermon, that the snake is definitely, I think, an allusion to Genesis chapter 3. But also Moses, in talking to the people, were also we're also commanding them that you will be safe from harm from snakes and scorpions and poisonous snakes and scorpions in particular in the desert. And the final thing, and then I'll be quiet for a second, is that Jesus is said, like I said, sending out 70 or 72, depending on how you count, which is the amount of elders that Moses commissioned. It was particularly in the context of Moses realizing he can't do it all. All the kind of pastoral care type stuff, all of the decisions that need to be made, he can't do it all. And so his father-in-law came to him and was like, Moses, sort your stuff out here, dude. Like, you can't do it. And then they developed this system of elders that are responsible for the groups of Israelites, right? Which then turns into eventually becomes sort of the Sanhedrin. So
I cannot picture how long those meetings were. 72 elders.
Yeah.
They're long meetings.
Yeah.
They're just, that's all I got to say.
We have what, 5?
Yeah. Shorter meetings.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the last thing too that I see in it is Jesus sending out the disciples sending out the 72 with nothing. As again, just saying, hey, you've seen, what God has done for his people in the wilderness, how he provided. So go with that same faith that he will continue to provide.
Yeah.
And, he's like, so don't take a coat, don't take extra things, don't take food, like just go and be where you are and lean into those relationships and eat what's put in front of you, which is its own, interesting statement. All of this with this backdrop of one of the 3 feasts where like Jewish men were commanded to go to Jerusalem and to go and make sacrifice at the temple. And here's the same moment where Jesus is saying, no, go out, be sent out with nothing. Don't take anything and eat what's in front of you and go with the kingdom. Like I think all of it, what we've talked about so far is, all of this is Luke setting up this large narrative where the reader ought to see Jesus as the new Moses and his kingdom as the new Israel.
Yes.
Like this is what Luke is doing. I think this is what Jesus is doing. I think this is what God is doing. But and obviously we don't want to go too far down. Like there's some dangerous roads of supersessionism and like
yes.
But really what Jesus is doing is saying all of these longings, all of these pieces of identity, all of these stories, all of this history has been leading us and showing us and revealing to us God's heart for us, God's heart for the world. And there's more yet to come.
And that God is doing a new thing here. And when you look at, again, context for the Jewish people in Jesus's day, they are, in this land that they had been living in for centuries and now occupied by, multiple different groups of like political entities over the centuries, now under Roman rule. And so they are feeling the pinch of this. And then Jesus is like, well, God's going to do something really cool here. Here is the enacting and living out of this new thing that God is doing. And so it makes a lot of sense that Jesus would be intentionally setting it up this way.
Yeah. And I think using language and story that makes sense to the people in a way that I think, like I read it and I go, you would hope that they see, Roman occupation and go, what is God going to do? Like, we know this story.
Yeah.
Like our people have been here before.
Yeah.
And God has always done something. Like this is like, so I think I do. I think Jesus is setting all of this up. And I think Luke especially is setting it up so that we're supposed to be asking that question. What is God doing? Yeah. Where is Jesus taking us? Yeah. Where are we headed? What is going to happen? Like we're supposed to be anticipating all of these things as we read our way through Luke, ultimately culminating with the cross and Jesus' death, resurrection, new life, church. Luke is already setting up Acts where, he's going to continue the story through the early church. but like I think we're supposed to be anticipating some move of God. And that's something that like I would love for our church, for listeners to hold on to and go, man, what a moment where, like at every moment where the people of Israel here with the disciples, still the people of Israel in Luke, like at every moment where they could have gone, oh, like this is the end. Like this is it. This is like, how are we here again? Like despair and doom and gloom, and the world is at war and it's chaotic and there's no peace, and I can't make my own decisions about life. Like, all of these things, you just go, no, like God's gonna do something, and like listen, like I think a lot of people wake up every morning and go, there's a lot of chaos, and it can lead to doom and despair, and I just go, what is God? Remaining curious to what God might do.
I left after I was done the bulk of my sermon prep. I left this passage feeling an immense hope, actually. In a way that not that I don't usually walk away from sermon writing in despair.
Sure.
But I felt a real sense of hope of like God's doing stuff. God is doing new things, and just be praying for us as a church that we remain open to that, even 2,000 years later, that we remain open to what God is doing.
So you, just to jump off that, you talked about the rhythm toward the end of the sermon, the rhythm of our, as the church, sentness, is how I would describe it. This reality that for the church, we exist, for Christians, we exist inside of this rhythm of being gathered together and being sent out. And being gathered and being sent. We've talked about this on Sunday mornings, and I think one of my mentors says that our gathering is for our sending. That the reason we gather is to then be sent out. I have another friend of mine, longtime pastor, who says like the most important moment of the Christian worship service is the benediction.
Yeah.
Because it's when you're sent.
Yeah.
Like back to where you get to take the gospel to. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So Jesus is sending the 72. He sends them ahead of him to every town and place that he intended to go, which is an interesting line.
Yeah. And I didn't even get into that, but that was such a fascinating approach, that he's sending them ahead and that they're going to lay the groundwork and then he's going to go and it's cool.
And again, like this imagery of, messengers that we saw last week, and that word being the same as angels. Yeah. He's sending them on. Again, this is Old Testament story imagery all throughout, but he sends these 72 on. And so the really practical question is, I think, what do you think it looks like for us to live as sent people into our own backyards, neighborhoods? Because I think that's the myth, is that, for so long in the Christian church in the West, we talked about mission, the mission work or arm of the church, as being like global overseas mission trip, I'm using air quotes here, style missions. And again, like one of my early mentors said, like the mission field is no longer overseas. You no longer have to get on a boat to go and be on mission. Like your backyard, like the mission field is your backyard.
Well, and especially when you consider, here in our context in Canada, we are increasingly an international place, right? And so the nations are not out there. The nations are here, right? And so that's a very different. And I mean, what's interesting? Even for us as a church, we've had lots of new friends coming from various parts of Africa,
Yep.
and they are already long-term committed. Some of them even Presbyterian, which has like been so much fun.
Yep.
And so I mean, that just reminded me in and of itself, like, hey, actually, like the mission work isn't out there across an ocean. It is, but it isn't solely that, but that there is work right here. And so I tend to think, I mean, I think there are some professions that are easier than others to sort of think through that lens. I think about like someone like a teacher, and I know some churches that have actually like commissioned their teachers in the church and say like, hey, you guys are going out there, and not just the ones who are teaching at the Christian school, but those who are going into the public system, into the Catholic board, whatever. And so like they get commissioned because they're going out and they're shaping these kids' minds, right? They have a very obvious on-ramp, right? But then you have like someone who are like, someone in middle management who's just sort of like doing his daily grind. Like what about that person, right? And I think about what it is to like be the best middle manager you could possibly be, and to do your work with integrity. To be a source of positivity, to be a source of joy in your workplace. And I think obviously there are some practical things to do to be more just vocal about. And I'm careful as I say that, because the moment I think about someone being vocal about their faith, honestly, my connotation is automatically negative, right? Which is not a good thing. That's not a good thing. That's where my mind goes, but it does, because when someone says you got to be more vocal about your faith, I think, oh, that person is going to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I think that when I think about that, I think about just like someone who is able to freely talk about, hey, this part of my life is important, and that hopefully we back it up by the way we're living, right? That it's not like, hey, this part of my life is really important, that I'm a follower of Jesus, and then they end up being poor examples for Jesus in their workplace or whatever.
Yeah.
But also like in our neighborhoods. I think about some friends who they after school, for instance. So a lot of parents will gather after school. One of the things that I see happening a lot of the times is the moms and dads just connecting and just letting the kids play at the playgrounds, and letting them hang out, and the parents get to have like some adult time. Like they just get to chat and just be, not think about all. And I'm like, what an opportunity that is there, just to be present, to care for one another. We've had that. There was an instance in my daughter's school, a really tragic situation that happened, and I would say it was some of the Christians that I know in my daughter's school who stepped up to be a light, to be the one to sort of like, I'm going to help start the meal train. I'm gonna do all the things. So like that is the way that Christians can show up in a profound way.
Yeah, and so like a really practical way. Like we're gonna make sure that this situation's got food for as long as they need. Yeah, absolutely.
It was amazing.
So I think one of the questions that I would love people to wrestle out, that I need to wrestle out every day, though admittedly I think our occupation here makes it different. A little bit.
The moment we're out in the public and someone's like, what do you do? How do I answer?
Let me bore you in 30 seconds. No, I think the one of the questions that I would love people to wrestle out is how is my job, how is the job I do different because I am a follower of Jesus? Is the culture of my employment company, like is anything different because I am a Christian?
It should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sobering question to ask, because I think sometimes we just check our, not brains at the door, but you just kind of go into this like autopilot. You're like, I just got to get this job done.
Yeah.
And then I can go back to life. And so I think that's a question that might help people wrestle that out, right? How is this place different because I am here? Because I think here's the second part of the question is, like what would change in your daily posture toward others, toward your workplace, toward people, if you expected Jesus to show up in your workplace or in your neighborhood?
Are you talking like show up like rapture
through
or
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying.
No. So I think sometimes we distance ourselves from like the, we'd love for God to show up and like
in the church gathering.
Well, or even like in the world,
Yeah.
in a way that I'm still like distant from. Like, God, you do your thing. Like, you show up, you speak to that person, you convict them. Like, I'm going to pray for them. Great thing to do. Pray for people. Never going to say that's a bad thing. But I think sometimes we can distance ourselves from the actual relationships by saying, oh, well, I pray for them. Like I pray for my colleagues at work and I pray that they change, their hearts and their minds about who Jesus is. And when I land on the work floor, I just do my job as though nothing changes, but I'm praying for you. And, I think the expectation is no. So Jesus doesn't show up himself to all these towns and places, but he sends 72 into them. And so I think, one of the things that we need to be open to is the fact that Jesus might be intending to show up through you.
It's like, dang it. I thought I was just a forklift driver, sorry, actually the responsibility is greater than that.
Yeah.
I say that as I had a brief stint as a forklift driver.
Okay.
When I was 19 or 20, and I was not a great Christian witness. And I probably had a bad attitude a lot of the time. And I think back as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, man, I could have been such a greater, a greater witness in that season where I probably looked a little bit too much and acted a little bit too much like everyone else there. I think I tried sometimes, like where, like some of the attitude and content that was coming out of these, these group of guys there, like it was not always great. And I, I tried to very gently just sort of say like, hey, I'm not into that, guys, but like that can be, that's not particularly helpful for like letting them see Jesus in some profound way. But I do think about like, other work settings, that one is challenging, but I think about like some work settings, people actually have done like alpha courses in their workplace. That's like a very specific thing. Like that's like a very like, hey, like I'm going to be intentionally evangelistic and here's the thing I'm going to do. And sometimes it's worked amazingly. That is probably not going to work in a lot of contexts. You never know.
Yeah. Like a mentor of mine tells the story of, two neighbors, right? And two families, fairly similar, two empty nesters, married couple. So, kids are gone, off to university, work, et cetera, whatever. Like, maybe they're mid 60s at this point. And I don't know if this is a made up story. I think it is. But anyways, he tells a story of two different roads that you can take as a Christian. And the one is I'm gonna wait until something happens in your life, and in that moment, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna support you, and I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna invite you to church. Can I pray for you? Like, what can I do? And they go, okay, it's not a bad option, right? But the other option or the other route is. So here are these two neighbors, and he actually fleshes out this story. So here are these two neighbors, and one of the spouses, one of the wives dies. She's going through cancer, dies, and in that moment, his next door neighbor shows up, like they've waved at each other, had kind of the neighborly talks, whatever, cutting grass, shoveling snow. And so he shows up, and he's like, hey, do you want to come to church with me? Like, do you want to talk to a pastor? Like, do you want to do this? And I go, cool, great. Maybe that goes somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other option. neighbor moves in early on, figures out that this next door neighbor loves cars, part of a car club. But he's like, hey, I want to get to know my neighbor. Neighbor's not a Christian. I think you should know Jesus. I'm going to join that. I'm going to join that car group. Not as like a project to work on, like as like a, kind of last minute, like switch, like, oh, tricked ya. But like, I'm going to genuinely invest in this guy. Like he enjoys this thing. I'm going to join the thing, and I'm going to go to I'm going to build a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And, they do that. They become great friends. He's open about his faith. One neighbor knows that the other is a Christian. Other neighbor died. His wife dies. And in that moment, you have all of those years of cultivating meaningful, genuine friendship relationship around these things. So, one of my professors at seminary, and he uses that story to just talk about the opportunity that we have as Christians to be intentional about building relationship and earning the right to be heard. And, the one moment waits until something horrible's happened, and then you're like, hey, can I talk to you about Jesus? And you're like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't great. Like, this is not great time. Like, I don't know you. You don't know me well. Like, don't talk to me about this stuff. Like, I'm grieving.
But if the trust has been built,
yeah,
and there as like you have the genuine relationship,
and you've shared your faith. Like, it can't be the bait and switch. It can't be like, oh, you thought I was like you, tricked you. Like, you can't. Let me tell you why I was really here. Like, it has to be a genuine part of the relationship all like the whole way through. But those are two very different outcomes to the same event in somebody's life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's the piece. Like, every single day, you have the opportunity to earn the right to be heard and to develop meaningful relationships with people around you who are wrestling life out. Yeah. And who will go through very difficult seasons and who we believe need to know Jesus. I can stand at the corner of my street and wave a sign at them every morning, or I can actually invest in
be in their life, and because one is about trust and genuine friendship and mutuality. The other can border on predatory.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to wait until you're at your most vulnerable.
That's icky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like, listen, like, if I'm going to choose one for, like, the culture of our church, our way of being, it's going to be that. Yeah. Like, hey, get into your communities, invest in people, build real, authentic, meaningful relationships, share your faith. Don't hide who that part of you is. Be an integrated person. Like, use that language. Don't become somebody else to earn their friendship and then, flip on the Christianese. Like, just be yourself. And then I think be surprised by how God's going to use you in those relationships. Yeah. In ways that you never would have imagined. So like that for the culture of our church, that's it.
And it's slow and inefficient.
Yeah.
But it's going to produce a better result. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
good. Yeah.
Sent to people. Okay. So that's one question. Here's another question.
All right.
So Jesus says, when you enter a house, first say, peace to that house. And I started thinking about John 14, and here's this prayer. I'm going to flip over to it and read it. So this is in the context of, like, John's got this kind of long, drawn out series of teachings and then prayers.
What do they call that again?
Preparation. That's the farewell discourse,
right?
Is part of it. So, but in John 14, we get this great line, and so I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. It's verse 27. So he's in this. This is the start of it. He says, "These things I've spoken to you while I'm still with you, but the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, He will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I have said to you." So this is, like we've said, so Jesus is starting to get his disciples ready for the day where he will not be with them. And then he says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. And then he says, you've heard it, me say to you, I am going away. And so it's that one line, like, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. And I started thinking through this idea of, like, so polarized, anxious cultural moment. We have talked for a long time about being in the age of anxiety. So, I don't think people need too much explanation to understand how anxious our culture has been and is, and how pervasive that is, just generalized and acute, both of these things. So here's the question. I think we talk about peace as something that we want to consume. Like, we pray that I would experience peace, or that you would experience peace, that it's something we receive. And it is, like, peace is a gift from God.
Sure.
Absolutely.
We say that the benediction, go in peace.
Yes. And that's like,
we want that.
That is a blessing that we're going to speak over you. It's not we hope you experience peace. No, it's go knowing the peace of God. Like, go knowing the love of God, grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, friendship of the Holy Spirit, peace of the Holy Spirit. Like, those are things that we say, go with. We're speaking them over you as a blessing.
Yes.
Okay, so to kind of riff off that, how do you think we can shift from being people who just want to experience peace ourselves to be people who speak that peace over others? So Jesus speaks it over his disciples. Jesus actually prays for it for all people. Speaks it over you, speaks it over you, listener. And yes, it's for you, but also we know Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. So how do we shift from just wanting to experience peace ourselves to not only being ones who pray for peace, but who actually speak it into and over people's lives?
I wonder if, like, so there's a part of me that's thinking to myself, okay, but, like, if I am going to be the person who is able to extend peace, not just be a consumer of peace, but to be a person of peace, a peacemaker, someone who is going and being the embodied peace of Jesus wherever I go. Like in this passage in Luke 10, so Jesus says, when you enter a house, first say, peace to this house. If someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. And I think about the peace that I want to offer others. First off, I have to have it, right? I have to be a recipient of that peace. So maybe like countering your question a little bit of, like, actually we do need to consume it first. Like we need to, maybe receiving is a better word though, to receive the peace of Christ, to know that it is present, to be able to be still and know that he is God, to be able to, and I'm noticing even as I'm talking about this, I'm kind of settling into my seat a bit more, because I'm like reminding myself of these truths. And all of a sudden it's like I'm breathing a little deeper, because I'm like, okay, let me settle into the peace of Christ, right? That he offers. And it is something that can, I would say, reduce or even eliminate my anxiety. And I don't necessarily mean that. I want to be careful in, like, there's clinical anxiety that sometimes we need medication for, and this is our weekly pitch for therapy and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But as someone who's done all that, as someone who's done all the things, like I know all the tools, I know all the techniques, I've done all the things that my therapist and psychologist told me to do. But also something amazing happens when I sit quietly and I calm my mind before God, and I bring my stuff before God, and I breathe. I love the idea of, like, breathing in the presence of God, like this rhythm of that. All of a sudden I am this recipient of God's peace. I am no longer operating out of this cluttered, anxious mind. And then I can be that person I think it's like this contagiousness, right? Like that if you walk into a room, I mean, you've seen it with people, right? Where someone is a highly anxious personality type.
Mm-hmm.
You get them in a certain scenario and the anxiety spreads. Like you can feel, I remember, I remember there was a particularly challenging, previous church challenging Christmas Eve service that we were planning. And there was someone who was helping run it. I can't remember who it was, but they were a very anxious personality. Mm-hmm. And it just made everything anxious.
Yeah.
And what a difference when someone can come in and just be like, hey, everything's all right. Like, hey, we're gonna make it through this. Mm-hmm. Everyone just take a second and just like center yourself before God. You know, like there's something, the difference in the room when that person A versus person B comes in and if they're helping lead and shape the tone of that room. And I think about that. Yeah. Peace, I leave you. And then so like you can be that person for your workplace, for your home, for yourself. Like it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I read a book that I'll recommend. It's called, so it's by Mark Sayers, and he writes a book called Non-Anxious Presence. And so it really is like learning to be non-anxious presence in an anxious world. And so there's lots of great quotes from it. But he talks about, one of the things he talks about is that as a system is flooded with anxiety, one of the central markers of that system becomes reactivity.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly reacting to things.
Boy, that sounds familiar to our general state of being.
Right.
2025.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of the reasons why I like how Jesus in both of these lines. So my peace I give to you, like peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you. I do not give as the world gives. So therefore, don't be afraid. Yeah. And what does that mean? So it's not reactive. It's not conditional. It's not, if you feel it. It's not when you feel it. It's this is a gift from God. And so I think there is something to be said about holding on to that. So this is what you're talking, like receiving this gift. Then I start thinking about, okay, I don't need to be the one running around anxiously trying to find peace, right? Yeah. It is like anybody who's experienced any level of anxiety knows that the number one thing you can't do when you're anxious is go, I can't be anxious. I need to stop being anxious. Right? Like it's kind of like you gotta let it ride a little bit. Like it is something that you have to move through. Like the more you fight anxiety, the more anxious you become. And I think the more you fight for peace, the more you try to find it, the more you try to be the one who gets it. Yeah. Obviously the less peaceful your life is going to be, the more reactive it's going to be.
Really practically, like, so this was, you and I did this in real time where, back in the winter, we had that big snowstorm that, dumped like 3 feet of snow. And so we went ahead knowing it was coming and did a pre-record. Yep. And I think we were all having some like pandemic flashbacks.
Yes, and, I was definitely.
And I
feeling.
I remember. Is it okay if I say you were feeling it?
I was absolutely.
And I was feeling okay. I was like, I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back, but I was feeling okay. And I saw, and that's not normally you. That's not normally you. Right. But I saw it, and I was like, okay, everyone, we're gonna gather around, and we're gonna pray, and we're just gonna like take a moment to be still. Yep. Because like, and like. that I think changed the dynamic, because I think that there was a little bit of like anxiety and stress just present in the room.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not gonna, the result is not gonna be what we want if that's the way we're approaching this. Yeah.
That was a great moment. That was absolutely a great moment, just to name this and go, hey, we're going to pray.
I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, Grant.
We're feeling it. No, I mean, listen, I'm happy to talk about it. Like, I absolutely was. Like, and I don't know where I think I was surprised by it.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like, what are we doing? I think what it was like, I really didn't want to cancel the service. I'm like, we can't do it. The last time we canceled it, we didn't come back for 2 years. And that's what I was feeling, was like the weight of this. Like, if we do this, like, what's going to happen next? Right. Which is how that, like, it's how that anxiety grows. And it's like, it is how it starts to shape the decisions you make. And you made a great leadership move and just spiritual move to name it, right? Which is so important. Say, hey, I think we're like, you said, hey, I think we're all feeling this.
Yeah.
And so let's pray about it. Let's just pray. Let's settle down and then go. And you can feel in that moment, you could feel the temperature of the room shift.
Yeah.
And then we recorded everything and had a great time doing it. And we went on our way, and that was it.
And Lindsay and my daughter and I built an awesome snow fort in our driveway, or in our front lawn the next day after the church service, and it was awesome.
And the next Sunday we were back.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But I like that. So that is just to say a couple of, like, so you named it, which is so important, and then you pray into it, which is so important. I think you did those things so well in that moment. So it's I think even to just simply take that as like the practical, okay, so what? You might not feel peaceful in the way that you assume you need to in order to be one who makes peace. Because it's not about giving your peace. It's about bringing Jesus's peace.
Yeah.
And so you can name that while not fully experiencing it yourself all the time.
And one other thought, I was kind of correlating this to back to Genesis 12, the call of Abraham, where they're this family is called to be a blessing to the nations, and the language I often use is that they were not called to be hoarders of blessing, and in a similar way, we are not called to be hoarders of peace. That we don't, peace is not the end. It is not the end result just to have peace for me. Right. The idea is that peace is shared and spread to those around us as we experience it. So it's a similar track. Yeah.
And dropping stuff. I think in the same way that we would articulate salvation, the end of salvation isn't your own savedness.
Yeah.
Right. And we see this. This is what we see, and you tease this out at the beginning of the sermon, where Jesus is called. The beginning of Luke, and then he calls his disciples, and then those 12 are sent out, and then more gather. Now he's sending out 72. We're already like, this thing is ramping up beyond what we initially picture when we're like, okay, Jesus, 12 disciples, 13 of them walking around. No, like there's hundreds at this point of people who are like just crowds constantly.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, last question, and I had to go to my real time written in a book sermon notes as I was writing these down. Okay. So to flip off that, probably related to being peacemakers, you talked about having single-minded urgency.
Yeah.
And so here is I don't believe paradox, but I think where we could fall into maybe like a false dichotomy is, like, what does it look like for us today to have urgency for the kingdom of God going out while also still being non-anxious peacemakers? They feel like they're at odds.
They do feel like they're at odds. And and you see, I think it was it last week or the week before? The rapture was apparently supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And then
apparently
there was a miscalculation, and maybe it's supposed to be like this week or the next week or whatever. I can't remember. But that ain't it. So I mean, all that does is and I don't really use TikTok, but like all I heard from my friends was like everyone on TikTok is going insane about like, and like genuinely, like they are genuinely like, the time is now, people, like this is urgent, we need to like, and I'm like, okay, back up. Like, one day we should like talk about the rapture and what Jesus actually said, but I'll leave that for today. I'll set that aside and just say that is not the sort of single-minded urgency that I would be after, nor do I think it is what Jesus is after. Because in this case, they had the urgency was there because the time was short, practically speaking, before Jesus was to go to Jerusalem, right? So there is a very specific need for urgency. That doesn't mean we're not urgent. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean there isn't an urgency today, because life is short and finite, and we do want to see the kingdom of God made manifest on earth in the same way. We do want to see hope brought to people, and life brought to people, and peace brought to people. And I think here's how I would think about this. You talked about a moment ago about how acutely and generally anxious we are as a generation and as a people. The urgency, I think, for me is actually like our world so desperately needs to know the peace of Christ. Our world so desperately needs to know the message of and hope of the good news of the kingdom of God. And to be anxious in our, and sort of like careless in the way that we go about sending that message, extending that message, verbalizing that message, you're going to have the opposite effect you want. And so I think about like just not wasting opportunities when they present themselves, like, cause maybe there won't be another opportunity, and I don't mean that in a way of like dramatic, maybe they're going to die tomorrow, but maybe. And so if we take the opportunities, if we seize the opportunities that are before us, that sometimes the Holy Spirit prompts us to and brings us to, like, don't miss out on those. And sometimes they're really simple, just like, hey, Justin, I want you to give a note of encouragement to that cashier who looks like they're having a really junky day, And I've done that before. And then there are times where I think I've ignored God's push and call to say or do something, right? But I just think seizing every opportunity, they're not at odds. You're right, but they could so easily be. Yeah,
I think it's why. So, at the risk of going too far down that rapture rabbit hole, like it is why I think our theology informs and changes how we live every day, because what I would articulate, I believe, about heaven and eternity is that yes, there is eternity with Jesus, and what I think the Bible articulates is with Jesus's life, that kingdom of God that will be and come in its fullness as a future-oriented thing is also in process of coming into being with Jesus now, and is still. It's this weird place of it's here and now, and it is not here fully. And what I actually believe So like, do people die every day without knowing Jesus? Yes. But people also live every day without knowing Jesus. And I genuinely believe that life is better for knowing Jesus now. And all of the things that we know into eternity begin now.
Yeah.
And so it is, you're right. Like, it is people's experience of peace in its fullest sense, like fullness of life, wholeness, health, peace with God, peace with others, rightness of relationship and life, all of it, not as like a believe now and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
But as a start to experience them now. Start to, like, your life can actually begin to change now because of it. And so in that there's urgency. I'm not urgent. Like I don't think there's urgency because I want to get people to heaven when they die.
Yeah.
I think there's urgency because I want people to experience heaven today.
Well, and that's that idea of, in the Lord's Prayer, like, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And the inference there is that we want to see more of heaven on earth, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we can go down the weeds of like the eschatological implications or whatever, like, it's complicated. But the reality is, when I think about the things that our world so desperately needs, it is, man, I look at the devastation of conflict, and violence. And if these places knew and truly lived out and understood the kingdom, how different that would be.
Yeah.
And it would change the landscape of our world. Quite literally. And so that's where it feels more urgent, because there is so many terrible things happening, both like world events, and then just like ways of being for people, for our kids' generation, that, man, like, without Jesus, I truly think that without Jesus, there is something so deeply missing.
So we want people to experience, receive the gift of peace, so that they can turn around and be non-anxious peacemakers who still have urgency.
Yeah.
Because the kingdom matters, and life inside the kingdom happens today.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to end.
Love it.
Awesome. So 24 verses in under 30 minutes.
I don't know how I did it.
Yeah, this podcast is not under 30 minutes.
No, definitely not.
No.
But hopefully this was helpful for you. And as we unpack some of the nerdy stuff, but also some of the practical stuff as well. If you have questions, you can send them to questions@courtrightchurch.org. And we'd be happy to incorporate those into our weekly discussions over these sermons. And I want to bless you into your week, and maybe even leave you with go in peace, similar to the benediction. So go in peace. God bless.